We are in Midland, Texas, in the heart of the Permian Basin. In other words, hard-working oil country. Over the next several weeks, I will be showing you all the great places we saw, including a few drives around town and out into the oil fields. The oil just doesn't magically appear at the pumps at your local gas station or convenience store. A tremendous amount of time, effort, hard work, ingenuity, and expense is involved. We will be going to places also in Odessa. That's Midland's sister city. Midland, Odessa is sort of said by some as one word, sort of how you might hear Dallas-Fort Worth. But knowing all four cities pretty well, they are very different. Dallas people are Dallas people and Fort Worth folks are Fort Worth folks. And the same goes for Midland and Odessa. I will continue to present powerful, pun intended, sights from these two historic and energized West Texas cities. Travel across America with me. We've been traveling to Odessa and Midland for over 20 years and have seen them both boom and bust as the oil industry boom and bust. But overall, both cities are bustling places with lots of new development and expanding populations, as many people now call this region home. Both my parents and stepdad worked in the oil industry, and my stepdad lived in Midland for a while during his long employment with Texaco. In this video, we will be going to the Bush family home west of downtown Midland, and as we walk around the outside and backyard, let me tell you a few things. The Bush family and Zapata Petroleum are part of the region's history. The Bush family home is listed in the National Register of Historic Places as the residence of a politically active family who shaped state and national politics in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. We were glad to see that their family home is now part of the Texas Historic Sites and open on a regular basis. After touring this home, we will take a little trip to downtown Midland, and we'll also run over to Odessa. We found another Bush home and tiny presidential archives display that I want to share with you in this video. We've parked the car, and now for a little history lesson. George Herbert Walker Bush and wife Barbara Pierce came to Texas in 1948, moving to Midland with son George Walker Bush in 1950. They bought this home in 1951, and little George attended Sam Houston Elementary, and he made lifelong friends and played baseball. Baseball will be a part of his entire life. This circa 1939 traditional style home reflects transition from Tudor to ranch detailing. Unique in history, it was home to two presidents, George H.W. and George W. Bush, two governors, George W. Bush and Jeb Bush of Florida, and First Lady Barbara Bush. Another sign facing the other way has a little bit more information about George H.W. Bush. He began to work as an equipment clerk for the International Derrick and Equipment Company in Odessa. Do you know what an oil derrick is? I'm sure you do. Earning $375 per month. He was promoted to salesman the next year and transferred to California. He returned to Texas in 1950 when he founded the Bush Overby Oil Development Company, and then he joined Bill and Hugh Lidke in 1953 to form a new company, Zapata Petroleum. You might want to research that oil company. We then walked across the street to the visitor center. The guide there was ready to take us on our tour, and he was very friendly and well informed. There were a few interesting things in this room about the presidents. This room definitely needs some attention and updating. You can see there are a few interesting things here that are related to the presidency and more, and then we popped into the museum store to pay the entrance fee. A family joined the tour, and we all walked across the street to tour this quaint traditional home. In April 2022, the Texas Historical Commission, which oversees the historic preservation of 35 other historic sites in the state, accepted the Bush family home as its 36th site. Another one includes the San Jacinto Battleground and Monument, which I have done a video on that. The link is below. The home was built in 1939 and purchased by the Bush family in 1951 for $9,000. This is a 1,400 square foot home where they lived until late 1955. It was purchased for $100,000 to become a museum. George H.W. Bush and First Ladies Barbara Bush and Laura Bush attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony. As visitors step into the home, the journey will educate them about the early years of the Bush family and post-World War II America. As we stroll through the Bush family home, I will give you a few details that pertain to them. This home has been restored to the early 1950s and reflects the lives of the young family through exhibits and furnishings. But for the fun of it, I hope this takes you down memory lane. This is a unique opportunity to provide visitors a snapshot of home life in the 1950s and 60s. Tell me in the comments what items jumped out at you as you watch this video. This is a traditional home, and besides having some rather famous people living under this roof at one time, the memorabilia and furnishings will likely take you back to your childhood home, your parents' home, your grandparents' home, or even your great-grandparents' home. How many of you remember the smell of your grandparents' home? I do. It might be the aroma of fried chicken or homemade bread from the kitchen, or a farmyard smell rolling through the open windows, or simply a musky, dusty odor from the home being exceedingly old and weathered. Whatever the case, I think most of you know what I mean. As you enter the home, the dining room is to the left, and it is filled with family photos. To the right is the den. This time period television with rabbit ear style antennas certainly should bring back memories. I personally don't recall a television of this style. The next stop is the kitchen. The guide told us a few things.
Why people can don't make it anymore?
That is actually a great question. I would have loved to have this kind of style for sure.
Like when you can step on the...
Because this will open the door. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is just a normal freezer. So, yeah.
I love the...
But I just love looking around and pulling back the cobwebs that cover memories of so many of the items in this kitchen. Now in the hallway is the telephone. This is the central location of the home and traditionally where the phone was positioned. Most of the time, they were party lines, where several families shared a phone line, but distinguishing rings would indicate who the call was for. Nosy folks could pick up the phone and listen in on your call. Or maybe you were the nosy one listening in on their call. Before we enter the voice room, I need to ask you to please subscribe. And if you have already, thank you. This room was the boys' room, again filled with time period toys. Let's look around. See anything in here that brings back memories? There are 2 rooms on either side of the bathroom, but let's look around this old school bathroom for a minute and look inside the medicine cabinet. Remember heaters like these? One of the rooms is about the family, local events, and city memorabilia.
With the Lightkey brothers to start Zapata Petroleum, that breaks off into 2, where the Lightkey brothers keep their half and turn it into Pennzoil, the really big brand now. And then George W. and George H.W. and the whole family moved to Houston.
The item I found most exciting was the phone book. Notice the 2 entries I have circled. How many of you have had your name in a phone book? How many of you have never used a phone book? The second room houses baseball exhibits. W, as he is often referred to distinguish him from his dad, began his love for baseball on a Little League team here in Midland. His name is on the roll. We can see he was born on July 6, 1946. I like this quote of Ike's. When I was a small boy in Kansas, a friend of mine and I went fishing. I told him I wanted to be a real Major League Baseball player. A genuine professional like Honus Wagner. My friend said that he would like to be President of the United States. Neither one of us got our wish. Dwight D. Eisenhower, 34th President of the United States. Isn't that funny? I found this sign very cute. George H.W. Bush was a captain of the Yale baseball team and played in the first College World Series in 1948. His passion for the game was passed along to his son George. No single pastime was a more important part of George W. Bush's life than baseball. And this is a quote from a letter from George H.W. Bush to his father-in-law, Marvin Pierce, from April 7, 1955. At times, I'm so proud of him I could die. He is out for Little League. So eager. He tries so very hard. He has good fast hands and even seems to be able to hit a little. It's just sort of interesting to get different insight into people, to make them more real, to make them more just regular people. And then many of you know, if you are a baseball fan, W's relationship with the Texas Rangers. Before the Rangers, I told him he needed to do something to step out of his father's shadow. Baseball was it. He became our local celebrity. He knew every usher. He signed autographs. He talked to fans. His presence meant everything. His eyes were on politics the whole time, but even when he was speaking at Republican functions, he was always talking about the Rangers. Plan to spend 30 minutes to an hour there. It just all depends on your interest. Remember, we are going to go see a couple interesting things in downtown Midland, not too far away, and see a couple quick sites in Odessa, so hang on. There's a little more. Let's drive around downtown to see what we can find. It's Saturday and the streets are fairly empty. After seeing a few things, I wanted to investigate closer. I first noticed the Petroleum Club of Midland. This is a very interesting club. It began meeting in a home in 1948, and this is where oil men met with visiting dignitaries until December 1980, when falling membership and the need to revitalize the downtown business area prompted construction of the new $5 million two-story Petroleum Club. The new facility quickly established itself as a premier meeting site. Can you imagine the money that has rolled through those doors and the decisions that have been made in there? I spotted this sign that had some quotes and oil information across the street. But one of the things that caught my eye was the Midland Map Company. It was established in 1950. And the reason it did is because my stepdad lived in Midland in this time frame, and I know he had to have walked through those doors on many occasions. Now, with everything computerized, I'm sure this company has changed and its value of paper maps has diminished into the past. I enjoyed peering through the window and seeing some of the cool things that they had in this display. Now let's hit our next stops, a Bush family home in Odessa and the Presidential Museum of Odessa. These are going to be quick stops, I promise. The Presidential Museum of Odessa is unique in that it is the only museum in the United States dedicated to the office of the presidency and all those who served in the office. The Hall of Presidents Gallery offers visitors an opportunity to view objects related to individual presidents. The collection of artifacts include campaign memorabilia of presidents and presidential hopefuls. Also shown is the intricate Deschamps collection of First Lady inaugural gown miniature replicas. Well, they didn't open until noon, so we had 10 minutes to spare, so we walked down the path to this Bush home. At Odessa, we became Texans, and proud of it, George H.W. Bush. This house was built circa 1947 at 916 East 17th Street, northeast of downtown Odessa. It was the home of 3 noted people before America knew their names. 2 were elected Chief Executive of the U.S., and the 3rd became First Lady, wife of the 41st and mother of the 43rd President. Odessa was the first Texas home of George H.W. Bush, Barbara Pierce Bush, and infant son George W. Bush. They were an unassuming, everyday family who lived in this modest oil town house from September 1948 to April 1949. Here they adopted community customs and developed social, work ethic, and leadership qualities. They moved in 1949 to California before returning to Midland in 1950. First Texas hometown, U.S. President George W. Bush. In July 1948, after Bush's graduation from Yale, he, wife Barbara, and infant son George W. moved to Odessa. He maintained equipment inventory, painted, swept floors, and performed handyman tasks. He traveled all over the Permian Basin selling drilling supplies. They quickly adapted to the community, embracing West Texas customs such as football fever. Are you familiar with tumbleweeds? We found this collection along the western fence line of this humble abode. I love seeing tumbleweeds cross the roadway. If you hit them, or should I say they hit you, they can do some damage though. They are dried dead shrubs and can readily pick up speed as the wind propels them. After scraping the cockleburrs off the bottom of my shoes, we entered the archives building at noon. On the nose. This wasn't what I was expecting, but I found it interesting in a quick sort of way. There is no charge. Even though the room is very small, I found most of the displays very intriguing. Here is what we found in the room. A photograph of Lieutenant George H.W. Bush. He does have a remarkable story as he was a young pilot in the U.S. Navy. A poster with Ronald Reagan during the Cold War. A drinking glass from Army One during the Nixon presidency. A whiskey glass from Army One during Ford's presidency, and a pillow from Air Force One during the Clinton presidency. And then there was this Marine One helicopter seat. It was used in the Marine One helicopters that had provided transportation to the presidents of the United States since the Eisenhower administration. The seat was donated to the Presidential Archives in 2015. The presidential seal patch is placed on the seat when the President of the United States is flying in the helicopter. This collection of photographs are from President Nixon's 1974 visit to Egypt. They had some information on Honest Abe, some music, why he had a beard, and then, this was really interesting, This is a segment of a hand-molded brick from the foundation of Abraham Lincoln's home, and a spike and plank board from the original White House, and an original White House brick. They have a section on the history of this presidential archives, and of course, campaign buttons. And this President William Henry Harrison campaign ribbon from 1840, a President Polk and Dallas campaign ribbon from 1844, Hawthorne endorsement ribbon for Eisenhower Nixon in 1956, Cleveland and Hendricks the People's Choice ribbon from 1884, Our Choice Cleveland and Thurman ribbon from 1888, and the Republican National Committee ribbon from 1956. And here are a couple bobbleheads. Have you watched my bobblehead video? We went to the Bobblehead Museum in Milwaukee. So much fun. This is Jackie O, and here is some memorabilia from Nixon in China. And here are some everyday items. I found this one really cool. John and Jackie Kennedy salt and pepper shakers, 1962. Lyndon and Lady Bird Johnson salt and pepper shakers, circa 1965. Golden Lyndon B. Johnson pen by Scripto from 1965. Welcome to the Republic of Korea. President and Mrs. Carter cigarettes from 1979. Wonder if they smoked. Martha Washington playing cards, circa 1950s, and a Protestant New Testament presented by the U.S. Army to Franklin Roosevelt in 1941. And this Lincoln official tea service cup, saucer, and plate. Right outside the door was this piece by Dale Chihuly. I love beautiful glasswork. He is originally from Tacoma, Washington. If you're ever in Seattle, you must go the Chihuly Museum. Fabulous is an understatement. But before we left, we saw these signs which reference the deaths of sitting presidents. James A. Garfield died September 19th, 1881. He was assassinated. William McKinley, he died September 14th, 1901. He was assassinated. You know, Mount McKinley. Warren G. Harding died August 2nd, 1923, of a heart attack. Franklin D. Roosevelt died April 12, 1945, of a cerebral hemorrhage. John F. Kennedy died November 22, 1963. He was assassinated. And William Henry Harrison, he died April 4th, 1841, of pneumonia, just days after his inauguration. Really, really terrible story. And Zachary Taylor, he died July 9th, 1850, of acute gastroenteritis. This is the Presidential Museum, Odessa, Texas. The girl at the desk said that they have a large collection and that the displays are changed every several months and that it had been recently changed. This facility is primarily an archives and library utilized by the students of the University of Texas, Permian Basin. There was also a large painting of Jimmy Carter honoring him since he had recently died. And the First Lady doll of Rosalind Carter was also on display. We had a few more stops planned, but the brisk, windy, cloudy day caused us to end our sightseeing. So I'm going to close now. Ugly shoes on the ground. Unclassic road trip. Please subscribe.